Hello there and welcome to my channel. I have decided to take a plunge into YouTube and try to make modelling tutorials, and I really hope that they can be beneficial to makers out there, that you can pick up a few hints and tips and that you can use what I've learned hopefully to make some really cool models. So the first video I thought I would do, quite obvious by now, is making boulders. Boulders are a brilliant piece of scenery. They're versatile, they're arresting to look at, and you can create some really cool scenes with them. So das clay, that's the material that I use to make the shell of the boulder. So as you can see, grab your das, roll it out. You don't want it to be too thin. I would say maybe about 2 millimeters. But it's entirely up to you, and I think this is kind of trial and error. Now the das, when it's rolled into a sheet, the purpose of that is to wrap it around the tin foil. So give it a go. Basically, the one of the problems that I find is that the pointier aspects of the tinfoil ball can tear through the clay. So you might have to do a bit of patching up and covering those silvery holes coming through. Though it could almost be used as a technique. You could, the idea that I had was something similar to like Lord of the Rings and Mithril, the way that the foil comes through it can kind of look kind of cool, but I guess most people don't want silver protruding through their boulders. Just a side thought there. So have a go at it, try it. Make your armature out the foil, and then add some glue to that armature so that the clay adheres nicely onto it, and then just shape and mould it. It's quite a nice feeling, I feel, like squeezing the clay into the foil. The foil obviously is easy to compact and will hold its form, so you can manipulate it. You can make divots, and you can make creases in the boulder which are quite lifelike, and you do see that quite often in nature, that very odd shapes of boulders as they've formed over the years. So have a play around and see what you can do with it. Obviously this is nothing groundbreaking in any way. It's a very simple technique for a very simple payoff, but it certainly can be well worth it if you make enough boulders, and you can make some cool dioramas. Once the boulder is all formed up and you're happy with it, the next stage is adding this stuff. Now it's Deep Gap Polyfiller. It's a product available in the UK. As for its usage worldwide, I have no idea, but this is what I use. It's a very gritty, grainy material, and it creates great stone effects. I use it for almost everything. I use it for my stonework. I use it for my groundwork. If you're going to watch my videos, you're going to see it all the time. So it's worth getting. It's about £7 for a tub. It will last you a while, and it's brilliant. Really highly recommended modelling material. So what I do is I just simply take some out and make a kind of wash with it. Put it into the container, add some water, and then paint it on. Now when you're painting it on, you'll get brush strokes. You obviously don't want brush strokes because they're not realistic. So stippling is a great way to avoid that, and it creates a more gritty, grainy surface. It also, the watered down aspect of the Deep Gap Polyfiller will seal and smooth over aspects of the clay, which will create a more naturally weathered boulder-like surface. And personally, I think this works absolutely fantastic. It's going to take a while to dry, so hopefully you've got a nice sunny day that you can put it out in, but it creates that real gritty surface texture, which when you add the paints and washes, it really brings it to life and makes it look pretty realistic. So once the polyfiller coating is dried and it's got a nice stony grainy texture, the next stage is painting. I make a grey acrylic wash. There's no exact science to it, it's just a bit of grey and a bit of water, and as you can see the consistency when it goes on, you don't want it to be entirely opaque, but you don't want it to be too watery. But then again, it's down to you really. I think that you want the grey to really come through. The polyfiller coating has a absorbance effect, so it sort of really soaks up the wash and it gives it a real nice matte finish. So although it looks all wet and shiny, it does get more rock-like, more stone-like. And once it's covered, let it dry, and the next stage will be detailing. The detailing is done by flicking droplets of paint onto the surface of the boulder using a stiff bristled brush. I use a toothbrush to do this, I think it's probably the best way. And get some acrylic paint, I usually start with black, and put a pea-sized amount into a container. Add a little bit of water because the different thicknesses of the paint, like having some neat paint and having some watered paint, allows for it to disperse in different ways on the surface, and it can create some really nice different tones on the surface of the boulder. And it also enables, the wateriness can enable the brush to disperse more droplets and finer droplets as well. But I would suggest first wetting the toothbrush before you add paint to it, so that it's already got some moisture locked into it. And also use some paper and flick the bristles and see how the paint is coming off before you then adjust and add it to the stone, so you can get some control over it. You'll know when it feels right, you'll know when it looks right, so play around with it. It's such an effective technique to bringing a very flat looking surface to life. For stone work, it really brings it alive because it captures all of those little almost insignificant aspects of stone which the brain picks up on, but we don't generally think about when we think of stone. We think of it as grey, but if you actually look at it, there's tiny particles in it, there's tiny lichens in it, and this is what this simulates. So next, after doing the black, I've started doing the white. You can already see it on there. Same process, just layer it over and apply it how you feel would work best. Looking at the surface, looking where you think it could do with some more white, and you can then change the tone as you go with these small droplets of paint. So here I've got a selection of different boulders that I've done. You can see here quite clearly, I probably overdid it a little bit, but you can see the variation in colour. There's greens, there's browns, and it looks great. And when you get that in amongst static grass, it just looks fantastic. I haven't done the bottom on that one because it's got kind of a flat bottom. Another way that I created boulders that sort of sit in the ground was just to leave the bottom open. When you roll the foil, push the foil ball onto a flat surface and flatten it off, and then just keeping it on the flat surface, put this sheet of DAS clay around it and press it into the flat surface just so that you get this flat edge. Hopefully that makes sense, but you can see the effect it has. It almost reminds me of a sort of geode or something. But they're great because you can apply those onto scenery and it creates the aspect that it's protruding through the earth, that there's more rock under the surface, as opposed to the boulders which seem to just lay on the top of the surface. But yeah, there you go guys. I hope you find that interesting or useful. It's worth bearing in mind that these techniques can be used on all sorts of different projects, and I do use it on stonework as well because it just really brings it to life with those lichens and those different colours. Overall, the aspect of the rock is still very much grey, but it just has all of those variations in it, and it looks beautiful. So absolutely go for it, give it a go and see what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more.